AI is poised to impact Africa in several ways. It has been hailed by many as a transformative force for African societies, promising to reduce inequality, alleviate poverty, and improve access to public services like health and education. The AI ecosystem in Africa is undergoing tremendous changes. Next session will showcase how Africa's startups are performing. What are the challenges they're facing? What is the way forward? I invite the panelists, Catherine Malherbe, CEO and founder of Metzol AI Solutions, Tam Ogubai Cindy, Professor Barry Dwolatsky, Wits University Johannesburg, Michael Nyebury, Engineering and Strategy Consultant at Field Cloud. And the session will be moderated by Dr. Bienvenue Akpok-Ponto-Soglo, Director, Government Affairs, Africa and EMEA CTO Liaison, Intel Corporation.
Dear panelists, welcome to our Africa leg of the EMEA chapter of the Intel All.AI 2021 Global Summit. On this panel, we will cover the theme of what it takes for an AI ecosystem to excel. My name is Bienvenue Akpok-Ponto-Soglo. I'm the Director of Government Affairs Africa and EMEA CTO Liaison at Intel Corporation. I'll be the moderator for this distinguished panel. And we have panelists from academia, from Africa startups, from entrepreneurs, from inventors as well. So first, I would like to ask the panelists to spend a minute or two to introduce themselves, and also please feel free to introduce your related work. And first, I would like to start with Catherine. Catherine, please, yeah, you have the floor.
All right, thank you so much for the warm welcome. My name is Catherine Malherbe. I'm based at the University of Pretoria as a lecturer, currently finishing up my PhD in clinical anatomy. And this has actually led to the algorithm, which have now actually started to me being an entrepreneur in the field of AI. So we have the company Metzol AI Solutions, which is launching in 2022. Our main focus is AI for diagnostic imaging, such as social impact measures such as breast cancer, chest conditions and such. And then also I run a local nonprofit for breast cancer patients for education. We serve over 200,000 women on our website platform to educate them and inform them in their own rural communities and in all of our official languages in South Africa, which makes it very unique. Thank you.
Great. Catherine, looking forward to hearing from your insight. Next, I would like to ask Tam to introduce himself and what he's doing. Tam,
yeah, of course. Well, thank you, Bienvenue, and thank you for the warm welcome, and happy to be here. My name is Tam. I work for Zindi. Zindi is a data science platform within Africa. It's the biggest data science platform in the continent. We have over 33,000 data scientists with an aim to build solutions for companies, governments, nonprofits throughout our community. And we build AI and machine learning solutions. And next to that, we also connect companies to talent. So if there are any companies within the African continent that are in need for talent and want to work with young, talented Africans, we supply them and help companies with the shortage of talent. Zindi started over like 3 years ago, and we grew really quickly. So we went from 0 members. Actually, we launched the AI Expo from 0 members to 33,000 within the span of 3 years. And there is more things to come. And yeah, really happy to be on this panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tam. Now let's go to Professor Barry. Prof, you have the floor.
Thank you. And hi, everyone. So my name is Barry Dwelatsky. I'm a professor emeritus at Wits University. I'm quite old. I've been around for a time. I'm in the broad field of software engineering. So I've done various work through the years in machine learning and AI, but it's not my speciality. So my speciality has become promoting innovation. And I created a large digital innovation hub or precinct at my university. I didn't say that I'm at Wits University, which is in Johannesburg. And I created what's called the Tsimologong Digital Innovation Precinct, which is in Braamfontein, which is very close to our main campus. And we do run quite a lot of projects there in AI, machine learning, and big data. I've recently joined the Deputy Vice Chancellor's office as the university's chief or director of promoting innovation at the whole university. So I'm Director of Innovation Strategy in the DVC's Office for Research and Innovation, and I'm looking after innovation for the university. And I'll talk maybe a bit later about some of the projects we're working on, specifically in the field of AI.
Great, thank you very much, Prof. And looking forward to your insight on this panel. And next, we'll go to Michael. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Doctor. So I am a strategy consultant with a French systems integrator and cloud computing company called Field Cloud. My background is purely in software engineering and solutions, both embedded software engineering and applications for cloud native applications. So what I'm currently doing for Field Cloud, I'm in Rwanda. I'm doing the Africa expansion strategy. Also in that capacity, I've been serving as a technical advisor under Field Cloud for edge computing with Smart Africa on the e-agriculture blueprint that is currently being led by the government of Zimbabwe initiative. Also on that, we are coordinating both the Eastern Bloc and the French Bloc that is in Ivory Coast. I've been involved in capacity building workshops for decision makers that have been the government, entrepreneurs, and academia. I've been present, I've conducted, I've organized, especially on teaching them and going through, entrepreneurship all the way to LP1 networks, LoRa specifically, because that's one of the networks that we advocate for strongly. And device configurations and all that. In Rwanda, back in 2019, I participated in the National AI Strategy framework. I think this would have been the first national AI strategy to be implemented on the African continent. I have participated in that. It's being sponsored by GIZ Fair. I've participated in that. And the reason I was called to be part of that is because I wrote an article, I believe in 2019, on the first strategy policy on artificial intelligence policies that I saw were supposed, I saw coming in Africa in the next 5 years. This was led by my mentor at that time, whom I was working with, called Miles Barundage at OpenAI. So which led to the publication and writing of that article. But apart from that, I still maintain as a guest speaker for Carnegie Mellon University, both on Open Linux, on Open Linux, custom Linux classes for the foundations, but focusing on the industrial use.
Thank you again, Michael. And then, yes, we touch upon some few topics and questions. And I'll first like to go to Catherine, and just to get your views and your perspective on how has AI transformed the field of medical imaging. Catherine.
All right, thank you for the question. I'm very excited to answer it. That's my field. So there's a misperception that AI in medical imaging is a new thing, and everybody's talking about the buzzword, the fourth industrial revolution is near, and we are actually already in it in medical imaging. So it actually already started 30 years ago in diagnostic imaging, but it was a very basic form, not as we know it now as deep machine learning and artificial neural networking. It was known as computer-aided detection, or more the word that was used by clinicians is CAD. It was used specifically in the field of mammography, which is a form of breast cancer imaging. And it has only been the last 10 years that it actually developed into deep machine learning. And it has transformed not only from a research point of view, but actually in the commercial sector. So deep machine learning now has actually helped to augment the clinical skills of diagnostic imaging specialists. And most of the research out there has actually increased their diagnostic input and output and accuracy rates by anything between 5 to 10%, which is massive. From a medical legal point of view, that is exactly what we all need. We don't want to miss cancers. There is a bit of a fear amongst radiologists, for example, that they will be replaced by AI. But one needs to make it sure to them that you're not going to be replaced by AI, but rather by radiologists using AI, because the use of it is imminent. Without using it, you're reducing your workflow rates. You have the risk of missing more cancers, and AI will never replace the empathy and emotional capacity of a doctor, but it can actually allow them more time with patients, because now certain processes can be automated and it can help with a quicker output so they can focus on the patient, which is getting more and more lost in the medical imaging field because they have so much pressure and so many patients to get to that they don't have time to spend on the patient. Besides the field of diagnostics, there's quite a few exciting local companies that I've heard of also working in the next step of the supply value chain and looking at oncology imaging, therapy. It is a definite need for any form of cancer, not only breast cancer, and to automate certain processes of an oncologist will also assist them in automating their processes. So in the field of medical imaging, it's actually been there many, many years, but now it has skyrocketed in a research point of view, and even more so in a commercial point of view, more internationally, where FDA approval and CE marking occurs, but more and more local companies, even like our own company, MedSol, has actually found a commercial need in South Africa, because we lack a lot of infrastructure and support for patients. So the use of smart AI systems is actually an excellent way to support patients in rural communities, which wasn't there previously.
Great, thank you, Catherine. Yes, infrastructure and then how AI can really, help, not replacing the doctors, but really helping them to improve what you're really doing. Fantastic. Catherine. Now I'd like to go to Tom, and just to building on what Catherine has just said, what is the importance of building an AI ecosystem, right? Because you need an ecosystem around, right?
Yeah.
The AI effort. Yeah.
Great question, actually. And well, first of all, what Catherine is doing, I really love that work. I have to say that we need more initiatives like this. The reason why we started, Cindy, is because there was a lack of an ecosystem. And especially in the African context, we have 54 countries. all different languages, and we have a lot of data. There is a big misconception that in Africa there isn't a lot of data, and that it's hard to get the data. No, there is a lot of data, and there is a lot of data science talent. But how do you group that, and how do you make sure that people can tap into that ecosystem? And how do you also make sure that there is a participation, for example, with someone like Barry from the university? So within Zindi, we also have like a yearly event called a Mujahak, where we have the biggest inter-university hackathon in the African continent. So we want to make sure that we are a platform where students can hone their skills, that they can actually solve real-world problems within the African context, and that they are also in a place where they can learn, so they can practice their data science skills, improve on that, but also engage with job opportunities. So making sure that if there are startups that are hiring, or if they're like big companies or enterprise companies that are also hiring, that our data scientists can be in direct contact with them. So an ecosystem allows a big participation, and also allows for a lot of problems to be solved. We've done a lot of AI for good challenges, where we solved multiple problems. They can range from problems from traffic congestion in big cities like Nairobi. It could be from agriculture, like crop field detection that can help researchers much better. It can range also in the field of Catherine, like detecting diseases early on. And you have like a bright community that has like a lot of different unique approaches. So imagine having your problem exposed to 33,000 different data scientists that all have a different take on how to solve a problem. So also for companies, but also organizations, it gives them such an interesting insight of how these young minds see this problem. And it also is a great opportunity if you can mean something to your own community. As Africans, sometimes we relied a lot on outside sources for them to solve our problems. With Zindi, we're working towards making this a bit more of the past, that we can solve our problems with Africans, by Africans, and with local people. So because we know what is happening in our own communities. And I think a buy-in within an ecosystem where governments work together, universities work together, corporates like Intel assist and work together with Zindi would open a lot of opportunities. And that's why I think an ecosystem is extremely important.
Great time for your insight. We can solve our problem with Africans by Africans. Great insight. And now I'd like to go to Prof. Barry. So talking about this, very interesting topic. What are the innovations coming out of AI research in South Africa and in Africa at large? Prof.
So could I just take one step slightly back and just talk a bit about research? And we're currently in the fourth wave of research. So the first research that we saw several hundred years ago was empirical research, where people observed and they would draw conclusions from what they observed. We then went into theoretical research, where people built theories to explain what they see. The third wave was computational research, where people used computers to do simulations and to process data, and that's computational research. We're now in the fourth wave, which we call big in bracket data-driven research. So research is now driven by data. So it's very different from the computational research, because we now have so much data that we can do very different kinds of research. And to do data-driven research, we need three things. We need hardware to be able to store the data and process all the huge amount of data we deal with. We need skills. We need to have people who can do it. And thirdly, it's very important that we have innovation. And I see innovation as that link between research that lands up in a publication to something that lands up like the kind of stuff that Catherine's doing, where we have real things happening in the real world that's having impact. So I think that kind of, those three things are three things that are happening at my university. And I'll just quickly touch on how we're doing data-driven research. The first is we are doing research on the underlying science behind data-driven research, and our computer science department, linking to various other people at WITS, are doing work on the actual science of big data, machine learning, and AI. And we counted recently, and our group of scientists at WITS is actually the biggest group of scientists on the African continent in one place doing work on the science of big data, machine learning, and AI. So that's the one thing. The second thing is we are growing skills. And we've been appointed by government to kind of head a platform that covers many South African universities where we are teaching data science, machine learning, and AI to people across a number of universities. So there's a master's in e-science that is multidisciplinary, and we're training the scientists who will do the kind of data-driven research. And then finally, and sort of my passion is in that innovation step, and we're looking at how we can translate the work coming out of our research labs into impact. And then I just want to say one quick thing about the platforms and the hardware. We are working with a group of people who are trying to pull together a lot of money to create a big compute platform. It's called Cirrus. So it's a private sector-led initiative called Cirrus, and to kind of support their efforts to raise money to bring a lot of computing power to Africa. We've formed a consortium called the AI Africa Consortium, and we're inviting any African university or research organization to join there's no charge in joining the consortium, but we're trying to just gather as many people together to share in this platform once we get it funded and get it created. So that's the kind of things we're doing at WITS.
Great, thank you, Prof. A lot of initiatives, active, work on how to build, on how to, have the next AI machine learning scientists on the continent, which is really great. A lot of effort in terms of innovation for AI, bringing the compute power to the continent, which is very important in terms of, the infrastructure that is needed. And so with that, I'd like to go to Michael and just ask him why working with stakeholders, as Prof just said, right? Working with academia, working with startups, working with government, working with industry is key to building the economically stable AI ecosystem and to have profitable African tech startups, because it's important. Profitable. Michael.
Thank you, Doctor. To be honest, the topic of AI, if analysts would agree with me, is really rather broad. And when I took a reflection, at the end of this year and some years, and as I come this year, I really ask this fundamental question that, who is the economic buyer of these AI products and services? Because if we can understand who the economic buyer is, then that eases the value that can be demonstrated to the consumer or to that specific buyer, whether they are whether they can be, whether those services or products are affordable. For example, as they talked about in rural communities. And why am I saying this? I'm going to say this because of the engagement that we've had. Again, personally, I've been involved, and then in Ivory Coast, and also I've been involved in the working blueprint. Currently, by the way, it is in draft. They have released under Smart Africa by the government of Zimbabwe, the agricultural blueprint. And I understood that it is important to bring everybody together simply because everyone has a role to play. And because all the other solutions that have been deployed in Africa have always been in silos, right? What I mean in silos is, they found that in a certain remote connection, there is no cellular network. So you have a VSAT that brings, best case scenario, 20 kbps. But that only solves that challenge. However, now when you're under discussions, you understand quickly that it is only the network is only part of the AI layer. You have the data, you have the network, and then now there comes the other question, because as you know, you may or may not know this, but for example, Rwanda in the recent, actually I think a week ago, published the privacy and data policy, and it has been enacted into law. Now, when they do something like that, are the startups aware? And every startup and every company in Rwanda, for example, has been given a grace period of 2 years. So how does that affect them as startups? That means that they have to bring their data in the country, for example. Right? So if they bring their data in the country and it is hosted locally by local data processors, right? Now, what does that mean? We are moving away from the hyperscalers. But what does that mean for both the hyperscalers or the cloud service providers and the startups? For the startups in terms of money, the cost of running a GPU. In academic environment, these are easy. My own university could afford to give us 10,000 credits of AWS credits to run our computing algorithm when I was at the university. But this is not, and I can say is not something that I have seen, startups can afford. So it goes back to the other question, who is the consumer that can afford this kind of services where the prices and the experience are heightened. So when you bring in the government together, then they understand, okay, if we moderate this policy, for example, around data protection, it has to do with the data processors. It also affects the data startups and AI startups. So what can we do? How can we come together that we make it favorable so that the price and cost of operation is lower, and they actually are able to bring services to the people that need them the most. That's the role of the government and the role of the startups and also the role of the businesses to actually come in and also realize that, by the way, what these people are doing gives me this kind of value. So to say that the need to drive an AI in Africa, at least where I am based, and even in the west part of Africa, we will need many hands to come together. And as we need very many hands to come together to orchestrate, that's why I like the Professor Barry's notion that, they are coming together to reduce the amount of computation. Because now you realize, sorry to go back to this, for example, in Zimbabwe, where we have been discussing, and we later found out that everybody was promoting and was fronting devices, as the precursor for data collection, at least in smart agriculture. But now they have not put in orchestration, for example, Who maintains that? Who maintains the support network? Who is trained to actually do the systems integration that is required to bring these pieces together? Where does the data reside? So you cannot only suggest, these solutions in silo form. You have to have these people involved so that they can bring in their competencies, but also most importantly, you must show them how they are profitable in the long run. So
great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, Michael.
Yeah.
And I think as you're speaking, you made a good point in the sense that when you talk about an AI strategy, it has to be part of an overall, right, country, master plan, country strategy. And you talk upon, some of the policy, right, needs in terms of AI. And that brings me to Catherine, just for the next question, to just find out if there is yet an ethical, manifold in South Africa or in Africa for AI in medical imaging.
This is where the ecosystem lacks in South Africa. There's only been one white paper released on AI, use of AI, ethical standards for AI. There's yet no legislation. And for that, we need an ecosystem, not just government stakeholders, all of us sitting here at this round table. We need government stakeholders, we need companies commercially in the field, researchers, academic institutions, all sitting together to be able to develop a proper ethical manifold or proper legislation in South Africa. Internationally, they have fantastic ethical manifolds and legislation, and it was built around the law of, I think they call it King's Act or King's Charters Act. I'm not sure. I'm not in the legal field, but I'm something King something. They've built it on that. In all the major AI cities, if I can almost call that international cities, where it's used as an everyday thing. But in South Africa, we're still lacking it. And it's now the time for all stakeholders to start an ecosystem on it. Because AI is not anymore something possibly happening. It's not just in the research phase. More and more commercial companies are coming out locally in South Africa, and also starting to collaborate with African continents like Zinzi, that Tamazu, all these other companies are starting to collaborate. And for that to happen appropriately, we need ethical procurement of it. And it's a big buzzword in AI. There's very little thought on the ethical effect that it has in my field of medical imaging. How does it ethically affect a patient? How is it being procured ethically? How data sets are actually validated through an ethical manner. A lot of the technical companies tend to buy in on data sets, especially medical imaging. And me being a PhD researcher, I'm very pedantic about it. It needs to be validated from another known method of medical imaging, like a pathology report. It needs to be validated. And this is why conversations like this is perfect, to actually start about talking about an ecosystem, to have these conversations and actually not just have one white paper in South Africa, but actually start developing a proper AI ethical procurement legislation, and just overall the use of commercial AI in all fields, not just medical imaging, agricultural, the use of food, banking. It's being used in all those spaces, but we have no legislation backing us. And that's actually a scary thing, thinking about it. We need to start having legislation going forward to make or to ensure that all these different fields are actually doing it in the appropriate manner, and doing in a way that it has actually a manifold. So thank you for that question.
Great, Catherine. I mean, you brought, the different aspects in terms of what really need to be in place, and the collaboration, right, that need to take place for for Africa to kind of take advantage, right, of AI, and then how it can contribute to the economic development of the continent. And to that aspect, let me come to Tam and just get your perspective in terms of what are the corporate and startup engagement that can improve the AI ecosystem on the continent. What are your views on that? Okay, well, I think first of all, and also to come back to Catherine's question or answer, what I do like is ethics need to be set. And I think in Africa, we still have the opportunity to do it and also learn from the mistakes that were made in let's say, other continents. So where they already made the mistakes, we should learn from them so that we can implement them the right way. So that's just to bring on that topic. But yeah, we see a lot of noise and a lot of engagements of startups, and we see a lot of engagements from corporates that want to work with these startups. Funding, it's like a lot of founders in Africa will struggled with funding, but now it's the best time to be funded as an African startup. If you look at the funding rounds with companies like OPay, Flutterwave, and then if for a South African example, you have, for example, Yoko. These type of companies are getting Silicon Valley type of rounds now. So we're talking about 80 million, 200 million, 400 million funding, because they see the promise of the continent. We have a lot of opportunity, and we are, in that sense, kind of like a virgin when it comes to opportunity, where a lot of other continents are still saturated with opportunities, because there is a lot of players that already moved into certain spaces. But we still have a lot of opportunities when it comes to logistics, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to fintech, name these spaces, also medical, in Catherine's field. We have so much to gain and so many opportunities to utilize. And I think it is crucial for startups to be involved with corporates, and corporates also to show that engagement. And if you look at like Satya Nadella from Microsoft, he always says a great leader is a servant to his people. And I think corporates also need to think like that. If you want to work with startups, we are solving problems that the people want in the continent. And we solve also with Zindi, we solve things that are local to make sure that it's betterment for their lives. And also that it would not only enrich their life, but also for economic prosperity. These startups are helping small entrepreneurs. It could be microcredit, could be like even, let's say, solar energy for people living in informal settlements. AI plays a role in that, so that people can contribute to society and everyone is included. And I believe AI has and machine learning has the power to include everyone in the continent, and that it's not only for the elite few, so that everyone has a place for a betterment of themselves and a betterment of the life. And I believe strongly in a real strong future of Africa in terms of innovation, but we need everyone in it. So even the panelists that we have today, I think if we already look at the different roles that we fulfill in the ecosystem, there is already like a lot of possibility for cross-contamination and helping each other out. And I think that is important and key to succeed for the continent. But I believe the future is now. Great, fantastic, Tom. And as you were just talking, that reminded me of Intel purpose. That is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth, including on the African continent. So yeah, great insight. And that will bring me to Michael, just for you to give us, what are your, when you look at the use cases, right? What are some of the use cases when you look at AI, you look at the continent, you look at the African challenges? What are some of the use cases that you see that, we need to focus on the continent?
So Thank you. That's a remarkably good question. So when I look at the use cases, allow me to say this. So when I look at the use cases, I can put given my industry experience now, at least in systems integration and Internet of Things, the use cases, the easier use cases will be the use cases where there is risk commercially. These are the kinds of use cases, for example, like fleet management. You have cases with the Lolo Alliance, for example. I have been part of the Lolo Alliance done by Semtech, and we held on the 3rd March 9th this year, we held an EME, actually a Lolo Alliance network, right? And 5 companies that were all there were from South Africa. And all the 5 out of the 9 companies, the 5 were South Africa, and they were in fleet management, asset tracking, logistics. So that means that commercially, the amount of investment in those areas, right, is so important that they need data to understand what is happening. And therefore, that is driving AI, it's driving data collection, massive data in those particular places and fields. So commercially, that would be, commercially, I say that those are the use cases: fleet management, asset tracking, OEE, or overall equipment effectiveness for industries. Commercially, if startups were to move in the direction of AI data collection and having the right foundations, I say commercially, that would be the place. Now, there is another place which you could call society for good, right? These are the things that that affect, the mass population. And being part of the agriculture blueprint in Zimbabwe, we understood that there were 2 kinds of people. We have the large commercial farmers, for example. This is in agriculture, right? Now, the large commercial farmers, those can afford. They have the money and the resources to put together and afford these kinds of AI solutions. However, there is another group, the smallholder squalor farmers. Now, those cannot afford. Therefore, the startups which are looking into using AI and AI ML products in order to derive things like irrigation thresholds, right? Over a wide range of data, right? Now, it's going to be difficult for them because those ones cannot afford. And therefore, now the use cases there and the advantage competitiveness, I have to be honest with you, is we are looking at competitive AI. We are looking at AI that is on the device, right? We are looking at AI, the amount of low compute power, but at device level. We could be talking about things as simple as a Raspberry Pi to a JSON for the start, because that gives me the backhaul to be able to compute the algorithm I need without running between 1,000 and 2,000 AWS credit from the hyperscaler. You should notice by now, the HPE having noticed this with Smart Africa about last month ago, they introduced and they a memorandum of understanding of building sovereign national data centers. And the reason they are doing that is because they have realized that compute now is moving away, at least in Africa, by national law and regulation, and it is moving in the country. So it's going to be distributed national data centers, right? So the use cases, they are use cases for the commercial entities, those which can afford, those are fine. But also initiatives and Intel and these organizations have to come in to build AI products that are beneficial for the people, and either moving with the devices, moving with solutions to enable them create products and solutions that I know that are beneficial for the people, for the masses that cannot afford. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And then as you talk about Intel, well, we are You look at our technology and so on is everywhere. Whether you talk about autonomous driving, 5G, Wi-Fi, 6E, data, cloud, AI, and all of that. So you're almost everywhere. And I would like to add one use case because, Catherine is here. She's CEO and founder of MedSol AI Solution. And so, in the healthcare space, AI has really great contribution there, and then I would like to call on that. And now I'd like to go to Prof. Barry, just to ask, okay, what are the entrepreneurship coming out of AI research in South Africa? And Africa, for example, the case of Catherine, for example. Prof?
I think that, could I just maybe say that one of the things about Africa that people know, but nobody stops to think about, and that is that we are the fastest growing continent on Earth in terms of population. And what that means is by 2050, probably beyond my lifetime, but hopefully in most of your lifetime, the population of Africa will double. So we're now sitting at about 1-point-something billion. By 2050, we'll be sitting at 2.5 billion people. And that isn't a guess, because the people that will give birth to those children that will make up that population are born already. So it will happen. And this can be seen as an incredible problem and threat. How are we going to do it? How are we going to feed people, educate them, make them healthy, all of that? Or it could be seen as a huge opportunity. And it's a huge opportunity because it's happening at the same time that this fourth industrial revolution is happening. So digital is going to make it possible to feed, clothe, house, and kind of sustain double the population we have now. And it opens up huge opportunity for innovation. But I think innovation, and I'm kind of sorry to say this to Intel, doesn't come from the big corporates. Innovation comes from the entrepreneurs, from the startups, from the little guys and girls who see a problem and solve a problem. One thing Africa doesn't lack is problems, and we don't lack smart people. So if we can marry the smart people in Africa to the incredible challenges and opportunities, I see the future of entrepreneurship and of tech entrepreneurship and tech innovation in Africa as being boundless. And my challenge is to the companies like Intel and others to see this as not just another market, another place where you'll bring your stuff that you develop in the global north and sell it here. But those companies will see their future as innovating and supporting innovation in Africa. So I feel so optimistic because I've seen the smart people doing this stuff. I've seen African innovation solving African problems. We just need to fuel the fire. We need to give people the resources, and we'll see amazing things happen. And I've no doubt about that.
Great, Prof. I think you nailed the real point there. Africa doesn't like challenges. We have smart people, and a company like Intel, we need to come and look at how we can bring our technology and innovation to solve African challenges, right? Bottom up. So that's a great point. And so we kind of a bit running out of time, but well, great insight. And what I'll give each one of the panelists around a minute or so just to provide the concluding remark. And I would like to start with Catherine. Catherine.
This was actually such a uplifting conversation, hearing everyone's input, and it seems like all of us has the same insight and outlook on AI, that it's a group effort. It's for the better good of Africa. And that is exactly where my heart is in research and why we started the company. Me being entrepreneur was because I have a deep passion and love for breast cancer patients, improving their diagnostic measures, making it available to all, and hearing how everyone actually has their heart in that same place actually makes me even more exciting to be an entrepreneur, which I never thought I'd be. I always thought I'd stay in the academic space or in the clinical field. So for me, this was a really uplifting and exciting discussion. It excites me for the future.
Great, Catherine, which means, I think this is really an important point, which is when you do research, see how that actually could come to market, because that's how you create wealth. Great point, Catherine. And I would like to go to Michael. Your closing remark, Michael.
It has started with forward-thinking governments, strategy and data governance architectures that are led by the public sector, and how AI is infused in some of these national transformation and governance frameworks. And then moving forward. The other thing is that we must look at full-scale block solutions. If one device can handle the computation, we don't need to carry the load elsewhere. If you can have the computation, the load on the same device, much better. It will be cheaper, it will be affordable. All the players have to be brought in. And we need to take care of frameworks for the common good. For example, we are discussing with AgStack to see how we orchestrate some of those solutions. And then I think the future for Africa, on the part of innovators, on the part of the startups, they will have to look into small factor computing and processing. If this is something that Intel can come in and solve, this will be a game changer for African solutions.
Great, thank you very much, Michael. Well, Intel is here to, to provide our expertise and know-how in supporting the government and the private sector in terms of the digital transformation. And as you know, as I said earlier, our technology portfolio is end-to-end, and we're looking forward to working with all the stakeholders, as we said, academia, the startup, private sector, government, and everyone to work together to solve African challenges. Now I'd like to go to Tom. Tom.
Well, thank you. I think, like as everyone mentioned, the future is bright. I do believe it takes an ecosystem to, as they say, it takes a village to raise a kid. That's how I see it for AI and basically the development of it as well, right? We need to work together, corporates, startups, governments, and also educational institutions, because we're in this together. And if we want to build a better continent, we have to reach out to each other, ask for help when we need it, and also to echo a bit on Prof's story. I've seen a startup coming to Zindi that wanted to tackle air pollution in Uganda. And air pollution is basically the reason of deaths of millions of Africans. They came to Zindi, and to come to the Michael's point, they used low computing devices to measure the air quality. We built the algorithm with the community of Zindi. It is implemented now, and it's going to be rolled out in 5 African different cities. And it's funded by $3 million of Google.org. So this is an example how ecosystem, education, innovation, entrepreneurship will better the lives of everyone. And that's why I'm really proud to be part of Zindi, but also be proud to be part of this panel. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate in the future for a better Africa and for a prosperous Africa where everyone is included.
Thank you very much, Tom. Collaboration, prosperity for the African continent. I'd like to go to Prof. Barry for the last word. Prof.
Thank you. Thank you for the last word. It's nice having the last word. Unfortunately, the last word, it's been said before. So I think that I agree with all the other speakers But I just want us to reach out to the universities of Africa. I think we're too small to compete. And I think that the universities of Africa have to think as one and work together and focus in on who gets good at what and share. And I think if we can pull together, if you look at a major UK or US university, in one department, they probably have more AI people than we have across all of Africa. So I think that we have to pull together, especially in AI, and collaborate, find ways to join our forces and to tackle the problems and grow the skills. I think we can do it, but it is important for people to put aside national and regional and any other reasons to compete, but to see ourselves as one. Thank you.
Great, Prof. I think, great call there about, academia and research on universities on the continent to work together to take advantage of the AI opportunity and see how we can really contribute to the development of Africa. Africa doesn't like lack challenges, but we do have the brains to solve those challenges, and therefore we need to come together to work together with the ecosystem, whether academia, whether startups, whether the private sector, and so on, to solve those challenges and to create the billions startups, companies for the continent. Thank you so much for being part of this panel. I'm very grateful and honored to moderate this panel. And I hope that we'll have the opportunity to continue this discussion, for further collaboration and for the continent to thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists, for the amazing session.